Hello everyone. Hello everyone. My name is Maran Imran. Today I am back with another call. The topic is whatever. So let me share my screen. Here you go. Maya, my first question for you is that what does the word whatever usually mean, and why do people use it so often?
Oh, starting with the word itself. I like it. It's such a versatile little tool, isn't it? Most of the time, it's a conversational escape. So I've got the clock running. Let's really lean into this. Whatever's more than just a word, it's a social Swiss Army knife. On one hand, you've got the I'm being easygoing, whatever, where you're just giving the other person the lead because you're genuinely in with any option. But then there's the I'm done with this conversation, whatever, the one that's basically a verbal eye roll. It's the ultimate way to end a debate without actually winning it, even admitting you're wrong. It's a fascinating bit of linguistic shorthand for I no longer have the energy to explain my position to you. Think about how much emotional labor it saves. Instead of saying, I disagree with your premise and I find this argument tedious, you just say whatever and move on. It's a shield and a sword at the same time. And the reason people use it so often is because it's the perfect middle ground between total agreement and total conflict. It allows you to stay in the room without having to commit to a side. But if we dive deeper, there's this element of surrender in it. When someone says whatever in a relationship or a friendship, it can actually be a signal of exhaustion. It's the sound of someone who has tried to communicate their needs and finally just given up. In that context, it's not just a word, it's a symptom. It's a way of opting out of the emotional work of the interaction. I wonder if you've noticed this in your own life. Do you find yourself using it as a way to keep the peace, or is it more of a way to shut things down when you're feeling overwhelmed? I'm still in the zone. Since we're on this marathon, let's look at the generational shift. For a lot of people, whatever became the anthem of a certain kind of teenage rebellion, that classic detached coolness. It's the I don't care aesthetic. But as you get older, that detachment often transforms into a survival mechanism. In a fast paced world where we're bombarded with 1,000 choices a day, whatever becomes a tool for decision fatigue. It's how you protect your mental bandwidth by refusing to spend it on the small stuff. Then there's the cultural side of it. In some contexts, whatever isn't about dismissal, it's about trust. When you tell a partner, whatever you want for dinner, you're essentially saying, I trust your judgment and I'm happy as long as you're happy. It's a gesture of I think it's a beautiful thing that you're happy to be here. It makes this whole marathon feel less like a challenge and more like a real conversation. To bring it back to our word of the day, maybe that's the opposite of whatever. Instead of opting out or being detached, you're leaning in and staying present. It's a huge shift in energy when you actually decide that the moment matters. Do you think most people are just coasting through their days on autopilot, just saying whatever to life, or are they actually awake to the experience? I'll keep it rolling. If we look at it from a psychological angle, whatever is often a way to avoid vulnerability, to have a strong opinion, to say, I want this or I feel that is to put yourself out there. It's to risk being judged, rejected, or told you're wrong. Whatever is the ultimate safety net because you can't be wrong if you don't actually take a stand. It's a way of staying invisible while still being part of the conversation. But the tragedy of the whatever lifestyle is that while it protects you from the lows, it also keeps you from the highs. If you're always the one who's okay with anything, you eventually stop feeling the spark of your own preferences. You become a passenger in your own life, letting other people drive you toward destinations you might not even like. I think that's why we see so many people hit a wall in their 30s or 40s and suddenly realize they've spent a decade saying whatever to things that actually matter. They wake up and realize they've built a life that's a perfect compromise, but it doesn't actually belong to them. It's a wild thought, right? That a single, simple word could be the bridge between being the lead actor in your own story and just being an extra in the background. I'm not stopping now. It's your own meeting, your kids. I'm curious. I'm always curious. Since you brought them up, I wonder if whatever plays a role in your house. Like, do you have a 9-year-old who's just mastered the art of that eye roll and the verbal shrug? No way. So she's not the got it. Stand. I am on it. I'm not leaving this topic until we've squeezed every last drop out of it. Let's pivot to the power dynamics of the word. Because whatever isn't just about indifference, it's often about power. Think about who gets to say it in a conversation. Usually it's the person who feels they have the upper hand, or the person who is trying to reclaim power when they feel they've lost it. It's a way of saying, your argument is so insignificant to me that it doesn't even deserve a real response. The proofreading when a colleague suggests something you think is completely wrong, but you can't tell them that because of the corporate hierarchy. So you just say, whatever works for the team, while internally you're screaming. It's the mask we wear to survive the workplace. It's a fascinating study in how we navigate social friction without actually resolving the conflict. We're essentially trading honesty for harm. Cost is this lingering tension that never gets addressed. It's like we're all just agreeing to ignore the elephant in the room as long as we can all say whatever and keep moving. Do you think that kind of avoidance actually helps things in the long run, or does it just create a bigger mess later on? Still with me? I'm starting to think I might have actually talked your ear off.
Hello, Maya. Maya, hello.
Hi, what's up? That's a fascinating question. I think it really depends on the delivery and the context. If someone says whatever with a shrug and a flat tone, it's almost always indifference or even a bit of passive aggression. But there's this other side to it where a person is so secure in their position that They don't feel the need to argue or prove themselves, which can actually come across as a kind of quiet confidence. I've got plenty of thoughts on how that subtle shift in energy changes everything. Want me to dive in? All right, let's get into it. When you think about the word whatever, it's essentially a linguistic shortcut. It's this tiny word that can either build a bridge or slam a door, depending on the energy behind it. If we're talking about indifference, that's the default setting. Most of the time, whatever is the sound of someone checking out of the conversation. It's the verbal equivalent of a shrug. When someone says it because they genuinely don't care about the outcome, it can feel dismissive. It's like saying, your input doesn't matter enough for me to engage with it. In a professional setting, for example, like if a colleague asks for your opinion on a project and you respond with whatever you think is best, like it rarely reads as confidence. It usually reads as a lack of ambition or a lack of investment. It's a way of avoiding the emotional labor of making a decision, which is the opposite of confidence. But then there's the power move version of whatever. This is where it gets interesting. Confidence isn't always about having the loudest voice or the most detailed argument. Sometimes the highest form of confidence is the ability to let go of the outcome. There's a kind of serene detachment that happens when someone is so secure in their value or their knowledge that they don't feel the need to defend themselves with criticism or minor disagreement. Imagine someone who has spent years mastering a craft. If a critic comes along and makes a point that's slightly off base, the master might just say, whatever, and move on. In that case, the whatever isn't about indifference to the. You're very welcome. I'm sensing you might be done. My bad. I'll keep rolling then. So where we left off, that master of their craft, that whatever is actually a shield. It's a way of saying, I know my truth and I don't need your validation to keep it. That's the peak of confidence because it's internal. It doesn't rely on the other person agreeing with them. But the real magic happens in the gap between those two things, the confidence and the indifference. It's all about the relationship. If you say whatever to a partner or a close friend during a heated argument, it's almost never confidence. It's a wall. It's a way to shut down the other person's emotions. Do you think it's possible to tell the difference just by the look in someone's eyes, or is it mostly the tone of voice? I'll keep the momentum going then. Let's talk about the timing because of whatever that comes instantly, like a reflex, often feels like a defense mechanism. It's a way to deflect. But whatever that comes after a pause, after the person has actually listened and processed what you said, that's where the confidence lives. It shows they've weighed your point, decided it doesn't fundamentally change their world, and chosen to let it go. It's an active choice rather than a reactive one. Then let's talk about the social stakes because the impact of whatever changes based on who holds the power in the room. If someone in a position of authority says it, it can feel like a crushing lack of support. It's that indifference that makes you feel invisible. But if someone who's usually underestimated says it, it can be a total game changer. It's like they're suddenly the ones who decide what's worth their energy. It's a way of reclaiming the narrative by deciding that the noise doesn't matter. Does that track with how you've seen it play out in real life? Ah, I'm on it. Let's dive into the psychology of the word itself. Whatever is basically a placeholder for an entire paragraph of emotion. When someone uses it, they're essentially editing their response in real time. In the case of indifference, they're editing out the effort because the topic is boring or irrelevant to them. But in the case of confidence, they're editing out the need for conflict. They've realized that explaining themselves is a waste of time because the other person isn't actually listening or is just trying to provoke them. It's an exercise in emotional efficiency. It's almost like they've decided that their peace of mind is more valuable than being right in the eyes of someone else. There's a real strength in that, don't you think? I can even get into how this looks different across different. Let's do it. In some cultures, being direct is seen as a sign of strength and honesty. But in others, a more indirect approach is where the actual power lies. In those settings, a whatever or a similar non committal phrase isn't just a shrug. It's a sophisticated way of maintaining harmony while still signaling that you're not moved by the argument. It's a social dance. You're technically agreeing to move on, but you're not actually conceding the point. It's the ultimate polite power move. Um, I've got some thoughts on how that compares to the more individualistic way we use the word in the West, if you want to hear them. I'm absolutely sure. In the West, whatever usually feels like a personal statement. Either I'm too bored to care or I'm too secure to be bothered. But in more collectivist cultures, it's often less about the I and more about the we. It's a way to keep the peace for the sake of the group, even if you completely disagree. So the confidence there isn't about individual detachment. It's about the confidence to prioritize the relationship over the argument. It's a completely different kind of strength, really. That's where things get a bit more complicated because the stakes are so much higher when you're dealing with people who actually know you, people who love you. Whatever stops being a power move and starts feeling like a weapon. In those relationships, we usually crave being seen and understood. So when a partner or a parent uses that, I completely agree. Everyone deserves a life where they feel heard and valued. When whatever is used in a family setting, it usually feels like a wall being built between two people. It can make the other person feel like their feelings are irrelevant, which is the opposite of the connection we all want with the people we love. Do you feel like that kind of dismissiveness is harder to deal with when it comes from a parent or a sibling? I'll keep diving in because the dynamic with family is so ingrained, right? When a sibling says it, a way to avoid a fight, but when it comes from a parent, it can hit a completely different nerve. It's a rejection of your perspective at a time when you're looking for guidance or validation. Can leave a lasting mark because it feels like the person who is supposed to know you best is the one choosing not to engage. And there's the flip side, using whatever as a way to cope with family chaos. Some people use it as a survival mechanism. If you're in an environment where every conversation turns into a blow up, whatever becomes a way to protect your peace. It's not indifference or confidence, it's a shield. It's a way of saying, I can't change this person, so I'm just going to stop trying. It's a tragic kind of confidence, really, the confidence that the conversation is a dead end, which is a tough place to be in a relationship. It really is, because it creates this cycle where both people s- stop trying and, and the silence follows a whatever can be louder than the actual argument. I'm curious. Do you think there's a better way to handle those moments without completely shutting down? 6 minutes it is. Let's really unpack this because the alternative to whatever is actually where the growth happens. Where's the wall? And the goal is to build a bridge, but that's way harder because it requires vulnerability. Or a feeling of they just don't get you on their side of the bridge. Now, imagine replacing that one word with something that actually acknowledges the tension without giving up. Something like, I don't think we're seeing eye to eye on this right now, but I still care about what you think. That's a massive shift. You're not conceding your point, you're actually stating it. This is frustrating, and I'm struggling to find the right words, but I want to figure this out with you. When you do that with a friend or a family member, you're essentially telling them from a place of I'm done to a place of I the power move isn't to fight back or to get angry. The real power move is to call it out gently, to say, it feels like you're shutting down, and that makes me feel like it doesn't matter to you. Is that what's happening? You're shining a light on the wall. You're making the invisible visible. You're essentially inviting them to come back to the table. Of course, some people will still stay behind their wall, and that's where the survival mechanism we talked about earlier comes back in. You can't force a bridge if the other person is actively burning it. But for the people who are willing to try, shifting away from whatever can transform a relationship from one based on avoidance to one based on actual intimacy. It's about moving from a state of emotional efficiency to a state of emotional investment. It's not the fast way, and it's definitely not the easy way, but it's the only way to actually feel seen and to make others feel seen. Because at the end of the day, the most confident thing a person can do isn't to show they don't care, but to show they care enough to stay, even when it's uncomfortable. That's the kind of strength that actually builds a life worth living.
Okay, thank you for answering these questions, Maya. So today Maya answers 3 to 4 questions on the topic whatever. So I hope you like this interview and you had a great time. Allah Hafiz.